The sound of Secundus Primus is the sound of a lung-breathing dust, a constant mechanical inhale and exhale of industry so vast it has replaced the sky. Here in the Underhive there is no day or night, only the shifting gloom of smog-choked lumens and the percussive, endless rhythm of manufactorums pounding continent-sized foundations. The air is a noxious soup, thick with atomized chemicals, sacred incense from temples that preach toil and the unrecycled stench of billions. Acid rain, born of the hive's own poisoned breath, drips from corroded gantries, carving rivulets into metal and flesh with equal indifference. Life here is a calculation of subtraction. Workers, their faces hidden by rebreathers that barely function, file into corpse starch refineries and weapon-stamping plants for 20-hour shifts. They are born in the shadow of the great machines they live servicing them, and they die feeding them. Their hab units are coffin-sized containers stacked 20 high, vibrating with the pulse of the city engine. Overhead, the boots of enforcers and the occasional, terrifyingly precise stride of an Adeptus Arbites patrol echo on the iron walkways, a reminder that the only god whose gaze reaches this deep is the God Emperor, and his love is a mailed fist. Despair is the baseline. It is the grit in the ration bar, the rust in the water, the hollow-eyed stare of a mother watching her child conscripted into a mining crew. This suffocating, lightless misery is not just a byproduct of the Imperium. It is the fertile, poisoned soil from which heresy blooms. In this soil, a seed has taken root. It does not call itself heresy, it calls itself truth. In damp cisterns far from the patrol routes, in forgotten maintenance tunnels, where the voxcasters of the ecclesiarchy cannot reach, they gather. They are the veiled coil. To an outsider, they might look like any other gathering of the desperate. But look closer. The woman preaching in the center, her voice a soothing balm, has eyes that are a little too wide, a little too black. The man guarding the door tryst has a brow that is slightly too pronounced, a strength that is just slightly wrong. These are the faithful, the third and fourth generation hybrids who can walk among the herd unnoticed. They are the chosen. They do not see themselves as monsters. They are the dispossessed, the true heirs of Secundus Primus, waiting for their family to return. They do not pray to the distant gilded corpse on Terra. They whisper their hopes to the star gods, the four-armed emperor who travels the void, the angels who will descend on the day of ascension to free them. This is not a rebellion. It is a liberation. They believe the Imperium stole this world from their gods, and they are the righteous, patient army that will take it back. Their patriarch, the pure, holy being in the darkness, sings to them in their dreams. His psychic call is a lullaby of promised glory. And that song is reaching a fever pitch. The final preparations are made. Explosives are nested in critical generatoria. PDF rosters are filled with loyal family members. The uprising is no longer a question of if, but when. They wait only for the sign. But the Hive's foundations go deeper than the cult's most sacred vault, deeper than the manufactorums, deeper than the geothermal taps, down into the geologically unstable bedrock that the Imperium's surveyors marked forbidden and unstable millennia ago. Here, crushed by tectonic pressure and forgotten by time, lies a secret that does not dream. It is a ship, a ghost in the truest sense, a vessel of unknown origin predating the Imperium's arrival. It is not the biological nightmare of a tyrannid vessel, nor the crude iron of an orc. Its lines are sleek, alien, and scarred by a crash that happened so long ago, the planet itself has formed new rock around its wound. For thousands of years, it has been dormant. But the ceaseless industry above the new mining operations, driven by the cult's own search for resources, have sent vibrations echoing into the deep. The slow, grinding pressure has finally breached a seal. Inside the vessel's hull, in a cargo bay that has miraculously survived the impact, the air is different. A stasis field failing after eons sputters and releases its cargo. A cold blue mist rolls across the floor. The chamber is vast, ribbed like the inside of a great beast. And it is a temple, not of faith, but of biology. Row upon row, nestled in the strange architecture, are the eggs, hundreds of them. Ovomorphs, they are leathery-veined and utterly silent. They have no patriarch to sing to them. They have no cultists to offer prayer. They are the antithesis of the passionate, fervent hope of the veiled coil. They are perfect, patient, and cold. They are a biological imperative, a loaded gun waiting for a hand to pull the trigger. And as the last vestiges of the stasis field die, they hear the approaching footsteps of a new world, and they begin to wait. It took Haka's mining crew 6 hours. The alien metal defied their industrial cutters, blunting diamond-tipped drills and turning plasma torches into sputtering candles. The alloy seemed to absorb energy, as if it were thirsty. Finally, it was Haka himself wielding his energized power pick with furious precision, who found a structural weakness, a seam that looked more grown than welded. He struck it repeatedly, the impacts echoing with a dead, thudding finality, until a section of the hull groaned in protest and cracked. A gout of pressurized gas cold and smelling of ozone and ancient dust hissed into the tunnel, making the acolytes recoil. The breach was a ragged, man-sized hole, leading into absolute darkness. Krell, holding a high-intensity lumen, was the first to step through. Haka and his guard followed their weapons, raised their boots, crunching on a floor that was not metal, but some strange, resinous material. The beam of Krell's light cut through the oppressive dark, illuminating a chamber so vast it swallowed the light whole. The architecture was non-Euclidean organic. Ribs of the same black material curved upwards to a ceiling they could not see, like the inside of a colossal beast. The air was cold, thick, and vibrating with the low thrum of some unseen dying machinery. A faint blue mist clung to the floor, and as Krell swept his light across the chamber, the beam reflected off them. Dozens, hundreds, row upon row of leathery-veined objects nestled in alcoves along the walls covering the floor. Eggs, by the four-armed god. An acolyte whispered, his voice trembling with awe. An offering. Krell walked forward, his analytical mind struggling to reconcile what his faith was screaming at him. He had expected to find archaeotech, perhaps a weapon. He had found a nursery. The eggs were large, almost a meter high, and seemed to pulse with a faint internal life. Haka moved to touch one, but Krell stopped him. No. Look. Krell shined his light upwards. Above the field of eggs near the center of the chamber was a larger structure. A statue. No, a fossil. Something vast and alien was seated on a throne-like chair. Its chest cavity exploded outwards. It was a monument of death, but it presided over this temple of life. Krell's mind, conditioned by decades of cult dogma, made the leap. This was not a ship. It was a holy site. The star gods, in their infinite wisdom, knew the day of ascension was near. They had sent this armory from the deep past to aid them. This was the fane of the first angel, and these were the eggs of the holy warriors who would fight alongside them. The patriarch's psychic song promised liberation, but these eggs, these promised purity. A perfect, unthinking, unfeeling weapon to scour the unbelievers. It is a blessing, Krell announced, his voice ringing with a newfound fanaticism. The patriarch gives us faith. The star gods give us teeth. We must see what soldier emerges from such a perfect shell. He had an idea born of that sudden, terrible faith. Brother Malachi, Krell said, turning to the youngest acolyte, a fourth-generation true believer whose eyes shone with devotion. You were the first to pledge your life to the cause. The star gods have chosen you for the first honor. Malachi's face lit up. He saw no danger, only glory. He practically ran forward, stumbling over the uneven floor until he stood directly before the nearest egg. What must I do, Magos? he breathed, dropping to his knees. Accept their blessing. Krell said, his own heart pounding with a mix of scientific curiosity and religious terror. Show them we are worthy. Malachi reached out a trembling hand. He was too close. The leathery surface of the overmorph seemed to sense the warmth. The top of the egg split open, peeling back like a grotesque flower. Malachi gasped, not in fear, but in wonder. Before Haka could even shout a warning, the thing inside launched itself. It was a blur of pale limbs and segmented tail. The facehugger, a creature of pure biological imperative, collided with Malachi's chest and immediately clamped itself over his face, its spindly legs locking behind his skull with the terrifying efficiency of a surgical instrument. Malachi clawed at it, his muffled screams lasting only a second before he went rigid, his body convulsing. Haka rushed forward to tear it off, but Krell grabbed his arm. Wait, look. The acolyte had stopped struggling. He was breathing. The creature on his face was perfectly still, its tail wrapped tightly around Malachi's neck. It has not killed him, Krell whispered, mesmerized. It is an implantation, a holy union. He saw this not as a violation, but as an acceptance. He has been chosen. He is the first vessel of the angels. Carry him back to our sanctuary. Gently. We must see what beautiful, terrible angel our gods have sent us. They took Brother Malachi to a hidden medici bay, a repurposed filtration cistern deep in their territory. They laid him on a cot, his body still limp. Sister Vash, the cult's sawbones and healer, gently examined the dead facehugger, which had detached itself and fallen to the floor. It was a dry, pale husk its purpose served. There is damage to his esophagus, Vash reported, her hybrid features tight with concern. But his vital signs... Magos, they are incredibly strong. He is stable. Krell watched his mind a whirlwind of scientific curiosity and religious fervor. Haka stood by the door, his hand never leaving his power pick. He did not like this. It felt wrong. Hours passed. Then, with a sudden wet gasp, Malachi sat bolt upright. His eyes were wide. I'm alive, he choked. He looked down at his chest, at his hands. I feel full. The angel, it's inside me. He was ecstatic, his voice radiating a feverish joy. I'm hungry, Magos. I am starving. He devoured the slab of ration paste. Vash gave him a manic energy lighting his features. Krell smiled. It was a miracle, a divine transformation. See Haka, the gods provide. He is reborn. He left Vash and 2 armed acolyte guards to monitor the blessed brother, and he and Haka began the walk back to the central sanctuary to prepare for the next phase, their minds already racing with plans to bring more vessels to the Egg Temple. They were halfway across the grand cistern when the psychic wave struck them. It was not the soothing, unifying song of the Patriarch. It was a spike of pure, ice-cold rage. Both hybrids staggered, clutching their temples as the psychic shriek echoed in their minds. The Patriarch Krell gasped, leaning against a rusted bulkhead. He must be overjoyed. He senses the coming of the angels. Haka shook his head, his more bestial senses reeling. That is not joy, Magos. That is pain. In the Patriarch's throne room, the great 4-armed god was in agony. The pure strain Genestealer thrashed on its throne of bones and cables clawing at its own face. It could feel its network, the beautiful, intricate psychic web that bound its thousands of children to its will. And now it felt a tear, a violation. One of its children, Malachi, was still there, but his mind was silent, a void. He was a beacon that had been snuffed out, and in his place, a new, utterly alien consciousness was stirring. It was a cold, predatory, and silent intelligence that had no place in the choir. The Patriarch sensed a rival. It sensed a parasite within its own flock. It roared, and the psychic backlash sent a tremor of fear and confusion through the entire veiled coil. Back in the medici bay, Malachi had started to cough. The time is near, he gasped, clutching his chest. I can feel it. His joy was curdling into confusion. It burns. Gods, it hurts. Vash tried to calm him, but he threw her aside with unnatural strength. He fell to his knees, his body seized by a violent convulsion. "It's coming!" he screamed. The two acolyte guards watched their rifles nervously raised. This was not the beatific ascension they had been promised. Malakay's back arched, a terrible, wet, cracking sound coming from his chest. "Get it out!" He shrieked a final, blood-filled plea. Then, with a catastrophic explosion of blood cloth and pulverized bone, the thing inside burst free. It was not an angel. It was not a hybrid. It was a pale, serpentine nightmare no bigger than a man's arm. It had no eyes, but its head, elongated and smooth, swiveled to face the room. It was covered in Malakay's gore, and it hissed a sound like superheated steam. "Abomination," one guard yelled, raising his autogun, but the creature was impossibly fast. It launched itself from its berth on Malakay's corpse, hitting the guard's chest. Its head snapped forward, and a tiny piston-like inner jaw punched through the guard's flak armor and throat in a single, sickening motion. The guard collapsed, gurgling. The second guard fired the bullet ricocheting off the creature's back. A single droplet of its silvery blood splashed onto the guard's faceplate. He screamed as the acid ate through the metal and met the flesh beneath. The creature shrieked a sound of pure alien malice and vanished through a ventilation grate. By the time Krell and Haka burst in, drawn by the screams, they found only a slaughterhouse. Malakay dead, a hollow cavern where his ribs had been. The first guard dead, the second dying, clawing at his melting face, and Sister Vash huddled in the corner, whispering, "Not an angel. Not an angel." Krell stared at the acid-scorched smoking hole in the grate. His faith for the first time was replaced by a cold, dreadful silence. High above the suffocating blanket of Secundus Primus's smog, the void was cold and silent. The inquisitorial black ship, the gilded scythe, hung in high orbit like a judgment deferred. Its surface was a cathedral of obsidian armor and macro-cannon batteries invisible to the planet's crude sensors. On the command deck, Inquisitor Varus, a man whose severity was etched into his gaunt features, stared at a holographic display. The planet below was rendered in sickly greens and reds, a topographic map of psychic activity. A massive crimson stain centered beneath the primary hive was pulsing like a diseased heart. The signature has reached peak saturation. Varus said, his voice a dry rasp. The beast is ready to make its move. It has grown arrogant. His attendant, a servo skull, whirred in silent agreement, its optical lens glowing red. Varus turned his armored boots, clicking on the polished deck. He faced a new hologram, this one showing 5 figures in black power armor. Kill Team Cassian seconded from the Death Watch. Honored Astartes, Varus began his tone one of formal command, not request. You are familiar with the target parameters. A Genestealer cult designation, Veiled Coil, is in its final ascension phase. The psychic taint confirms the presence of a Patriarch-class creature. Your mission is surgical, clean and precise. He gestured, and a 3-dimensional map of the Underhive's deepest sectors appeared. My agents have triangulated the approximate location of the primary psychic locus. You will deploy via covert drop pod, infiltrate the sanctuary, terminate the Patriarch, and place the locator beacon. Once the beacon is active, my fleet will begin the surface purge. This is a standard Xeno heresy, gentlemen. I have cleansed a dozen just like it. Varus radiated an aura of absolute, unshakable confidence. He had seen everything this galaxy had to offer. Or so he believed. Inquisitor, a new voice cut in. It was Lexographer Prime Thuld, his subordinate at the Master Augur Station. A moment. Varus looked annoyed by the interruption. What is it? Thuld tapped at his console, bringing up a new data slate. Sir, we detected an anomalous energy reading approximately 4 hours ago. A massive localized power drain in Sector 9 deep in the bedrock. Far deeper than known hive structures. Varus waved a dismissive hand. The cult's mining operations. They are digging their own graves. Irrelevant. Thula persisted, his duty overriding his caution. Perhaps, Lord. But at the same time, we lost contact with all 3 of our deep-level assets within the PDF. Not sequentially, sir. All at once. Their voxcasters went completely silent. No distress calls, no data bursts. Just silence. Varus stared at the report for a long moment, his gaze hardening. The cult grows bold, he finally declared, closing the file. They are eliminating liabilities before their uprising. It simply confirms our timeline. Proceed with the deployment, Sergeant Cassian. Find the head of the snake. All other concerns are secondary. The thing that was born from Malachi's ruined chest did not wait. It did not think. It acted. It fled into the maze of ventilation shafts, a realm of darkness, dust, and discarded refuse. In this new metal and stone jungle, it was a king. It moved with a speed and silence that defied its recent birth, a perfect predator unleashed. Its first kill was a pack of hive rats devoured in a flurry of inner jaw strikes. The meager sustenance was metabolized, instantly fueling a hyper-accelerated growth. Within hours, it had shed its skin, emerging larger, its pale flesh hardening into a segmented biomechanical carapace of chitinous black. It was a drone, and it was hungry. It found a sump scavenger, one of the lost souls who sifted through the Underhive's toxic filth and dragged him screaming into an overflow pipe. By the time the scavenger's screams died, the creature was already the size of a man, its instincts screaming at it, driving it, pulling it toward a single overwhelming stimulus. It was not a thought, it was a sound. A psychic song that permeated the very iron of the hive. The creature itself, a psychic void, felt this song as a pressure, an irritation, a challenge. It was the loudest, warmest, most powerful life sign in this entire territory, a beacon in the dark. The drone was drawn to it not by faith, but by a biological imperative. The apex predator of its own environment, it sensed the apex predator of this environment. It sensed the throne. It sensed the god. And its only instinct was to kill it. It moved through the cult's territory like a phantom, bypassing patrols with an alien cunning, using forgotten ducts and drainage tunnels that the hybrids, for all their familiarity, had long since sealed off. The Patriarch's throne room was a cavernous space, a desecrated ecclesiarchal shrine. The great four-armed Genestealer sat on its throne of scavenged machinery, and fused bone still seething from the psychic wound it had felt earlier. Its hybrid guards, the Anointed, stood sentinel, their minds dulled and confused by their god's agitation. They did not see the shadow detach itself from the vaulted ceiling. The Xenomorph drone dropped into the center of the chamber landing, without a sound on the stone floor. It rose to its full height, its eyeless head tilted in a gesture of horrifying inquisition. The Anointed guards turned their autoguns, raising, but they were too slow. The drone was a black blur. It eviscerated 2 guards with its claws, its tail spike impaling a third. The air filled with the sizzle of acid blood, melting flak armor, and the shriek of the hybrids. The Patriarch roared a psychic blast of pure dominance and launched itself from the throne. It was a creature of immense psychic power and biological strength, a living god to its followers. But the Xenomorph was fast. It dodged the Patriarch's first charge, its claws raking across the Genestealer's flank, drawing purple blood. The Patriarch shrieked in pain, a physical pain it had not felt in decades, and countered its own razor-sharp talons, tearing a chunk of chitin from the drone's shoulder. The battle was a horrific spectacle. Tyrannid cunning and psychic might against pure predatory perfection. The drone lunged its inner jaw, snapping forward, but the Patriarch caught it, its forearms grappling the smaller creature. For a moment, the Genestealer had the upper hand, its strength ready to tear the drone apart. But the drone had one last weapon. It coiled its body and bled. Its pressurized acid blood sprayed from its own wound onto the Patriarch's chest and arms. The Genestealer god screamed a sound of unbelievable agony, both psychic and physical, as the molecular acid dissolved its holy flesh. It hurled the drone across the room, where it crashed against the wall, and then the Xenomorph, wounded, but victorious in its objective, scrambled with impossible speed back into the darkness of the vents. The Patriarch collapsed, clutching its smoking, dissolving wounds. Its psychic song of rage transformed into a galaxy-spanning shriek of agony, and for the first time, fear. The psychic scream of the wounded Patriarch did not just echo in the throne room, it detonated across the entire veiled coil. In the central cistern, hundreds of faithful had gathered, confused by the earlier tremor of rage. Now they were struck by a wave of pure, undiluted terror. It was their god's own fear broadcast directly into their minds, unfiltered and overwhelming. The effect was catastrophic. Hybrids collapsed, clawing at their temples. Fourth-generation members, nearly human, began weeping uncontrollably, their faith shattering as the divine presence that had cradled them, their entire lives, was suddenly laced with agony. A mass panic began, a stampede of believers running from a shadow in their own souls. What is happening? A woman shrieked at Magos Krell, who had just arrived. Our god is in pain. He is... Afraid, Krell tried to project an aura of calm, his psychic voice straining. It is a test, a holy trial. The star gods are... But he stopped. He couldn't finish the lie. He had seen the acid-scorched vent. He had felt the cold, silent void of the creature that had inflicted this wound. This was not a test. This was an invasion. A test he is failing. The voice was harsh, guttural. Primus Hacker pushed through the panicked throng, his own cohort of heavy weapons hybrids flanking him. They were not panicked. Their bestial features were set in a mask of grim fascination. Primus Krell snapped, trying to regain authority. Control your men. We must secure the sanctuary. Hacker laughed, a dry, barking sound. Secure what? The tomb of a wounded god? I was there, Magos. I saw your angel. It did not sing. It did not promise. It fought. It bled acid and clawed a god. Hacker stepped closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial roar. You said it was a blessing. You were right, but not in the way your weak mind saw it. Hacker climbed onto a stack of crates, his military presence silencing the nearest cultists. For generations we have waited for the star gods, he yelled. We have waited for the Patriarch to deliver us, but what has he delivered? Pain. He pointed at the cowering faithful, and fear. We have become weak waiting. And the star gods see this. They see our rot. He paused, letting the silence fester. So they have sent us a new god. A new test. They have sent the scourge, the acid-blooded angel. It has come not to save the weak, but to cull them. It is the divine filter. A new dark fanaticism was lighting in the eyes of his soldiers. They were warriors, and this new ideology resonated with their violent nature. Krell was horrified. This is blasphemy. This is division. The family must be united. The family is a corpse, Krell Hacker spat. The angel has shown us. Strength is the only truth. Purity is the only law. We are done hiding. We are done waiting. He turned to his hybrid cohort. We are the Purged, and we will provide the new god with the fuel it needs. He and his faction, at least 50 of the cult's best fighters, turned their backs on Krell. Where are you going? Krell demanded. Hacker looked back over his shoulder, a terrible smile on his face. To the temple, to make an offering. Krell watched them go, his heart cold. He was left with the panicked, the confused, the weak. While the cult's military arm marched back to Sector 9, back to the Egg Temple, this time they weren't just exploring, they were worshipping. And they were dragging with them 3 captured PDF troopers saved from a previous raid. Vessels for the Angel Hakkar called them. Let us see what a true warrior breeds. Primus Hacker and his splinter group. The Purged arrived at the hull breach of the ancient ship, not as explorers, but as zealots on a pilgrimage. They dragged their 3 sacrifices, their hands bound 2 shivering, terrified PDF troopers, and a third, far more valuable offering. He was an Ogryn, a sanctioned abhuman assigned to the local PDF garrison captured by Hakka's infiltrators weeks ago and saved for the uprising. His name was Brak, and his huge, simple face was a mask of confusion and fear. The Magos offered the angel a child, Hakka spat, gesturing to the ragged breach. A weak vessel, a sniveling sacrifice. The angel rejected it. It demands strength. He slammed his fist into the Ogryn's massive bicep. The muscle didn't even twitch. So we will give it a titan. We will offer it a womb of pure, unthinking power. They entered the egg temple, the cold mist swirling around their boots. The chamber was just as they had left it, a silent cathedral of potential. The appetizers first, Hakka commanded. His hybrids shoved the two human troopers forward, kicking their knees out from under them. Offer yourselves to the scourge, be the first bricks in the new temple. The terrified men were pushed, stumbling into the field of eggs. They were too close. Two overmorphs burst open. Two facehuggers launched, and the men's muffled screams were cut short. They were dragged back unconscious, their faces locked in the creature's pale embrace. Good Hakka grunted, unimpressed. They will be scouts, drones. But the Ogryn. He turned his gaze to the center of the chamber, near the fossilized giant in its command throne. There, in a place of honor, sat an egg they had not noticed before. It was larger slicker, with a bronze-like sheen, and armored ridges ran along its surface. That one, Hakka said, his voice filled with religious awe. The egg of a king, for a body of a giant. They unbound the Ogryn, whose whimpers were now deep, guttural sounds of terror. It took 4 of Hakka's strongest hybrids to lift and half-throw the massive abhuman onto the royal egg. For a moment, nothing happened. Brak tried to scramble away. Then the armored egg split open, but it did not launch its contents. The thing that emerged was larger, thicker, its legs spurred with claws. It was a royal facehugger. It crawled onto the Ogryn's massive chest, its movements deliberate, almost analytical. It seemed to inspect its host. Then it struck its legs, locking around Brak's skull with a sound of cracking bone. The Ogryn's whole body went rigid, a single titanic spasm, and then he was utterly still. Hakka and his followers waited, their weapons raised in a silent, holy vigil. The 2 human hosts birthed first. It was quick, violent, and messy. 2 small, shrieking creatures tore themselves free. But before the purged could react, the new drones, slick with gore, scrambled up the ribbed walls and vanished into the ship's superstructure, hissing. They hunt, Hakka smiled. They know their purpose. Then the Ogryn began to move. It was not a cough or a twitch, it was a seismic event. Brak's entire massive frame began to convulse, the spasms so violent they cracked the resinous floor. Behold, Hakka roared, raising his power pick, the birth of the true warrior, the angel king. The Ogryn's chest, a wall of muscle and bone, did not just burst, it detonated. Ribs the size of fence posts were flung across the chamber. And from the pulped, ruined cavity, a new nightmare unfolded itself. It was already huge, easily twice the size of the drone that had attacked the Patriarch. Its black chitin was glistening, its head crowned with a vast, bladed crest. A smaller secondary set of arms was folded on its chest, and its tail was a massive, serrated blade. It was a queen. She rose to her full height and unleashed a scream, not a bestial shriek, but a high-pitched, piercing, intelligent sound of command. Glory, one of Hakka's men cried, falling to his knees. The queen's head snapped toward the sound. She did not see a worshipper. She saw a threat. She moved faster than anything Hakka had ever seen. In a blur of black chitin and silver claws, she was upon them. She tore through his elite guard, her tail impaling 2 men at once, her inner jaw shattering the skull of a third. Acid did not spray. This was a clean, brutal execution. In 10 seconds, half of Hakka's squad was dead or dying. Hakka himself, spattered in the purple blood of his own men, was laughing. He dropped to his knees, not in fear, but in pure religious ecstasy. Yes, he roared at the carnage. Yes, the scourge, it culls the weak, it is pure, it is perfect. The Queen paused, her head tilted, considering the kneeling, ecstatic hybrid. She shrieked again a command, and then ignored him. Her purpose was clear. She strode past HCAR, tore the ancient fossilized pilot from its throne, and sat herself in the command chair. Immediately, a thick, glistening resin began to secrete from her vast abdomen already swelling. She was not just hiding. She was building. The egg temple was gone. In its place, the hive had begun. The Corvus Blackstar designation Nixus's shadow sliced through the upper atmosphere like a scalpel, its stealth fields shimmering as it navigated the dense, toxic clouds of Secundus Primus's hive spires. It bypassed the planetary defense grid, which was already half-blinded by the cult's own jamming signals, and plunged into the abyss of the Underhive. It navigated the chasms between continent-sized manufactorums, its retro-thrusters burning cold as it descended into a forgotten, non-existent sector, a structural void used for ancient pressure equalization. It landed in a vast cathedral-like cistern, with a whisper the massive chamber lit only by the faint red glow of the gunship's cockpit. The assault ramp lowered, and 5 figures, black-armored and silent, disembarked. Kill Team Cassian. Their silver Deathwatch pauldrons were the only break in their obsidian armor. With them in his own suit of dark blue artificer armor was Inquisitor Varus. His face was a grim mask, his power sword hissing softly at his hip. Auspex scan, Sergeant Varus ordered. Sergeant Cassian, a veteran space marine from the Ultramarines, nodded, reading multiple life signs moving in patrol patterns, all Xeno-tainted. The kill team advanced, their movements economical and perfectly synchronized. They were a 5-man army, an expression of the Imperium's lethal will. They had not moved a kilometer before the first encounter. A squad of hybrids, part of Krell's faction, was rounding a corner, their mismatched armor and scavenged lasguns held with zealous fervor. For the Star Gods, their leader, a 3rd-generation hybrid with a bestial jaw, screamed, spotting them. The fight lasted 7 seconds. Bolter-fire, precise and devastating, turned the hybrids into clouds of red mist and shattered bone. Brother Marine Zal, a Black Templar, bisected the leader with his chain sword. The Astartes didn't even break their stride, stepping over the twitching remains. Varus observed the carnage with a cold satisfaction. As I predicted, he voxed to Cassian. Standard heretic strain. They are rabid, but predictable. They continued deeper, following the fading psychic echo of the Patriarch's pain, which Varus mistook for a beacon of power. They entered a major transit way, a nexus of intersecting tunnels, and the whole kill team stopped. The air here was thick with a new, horrifying smell, a mix of ozone-roasted flesh, and something acrid that stung the inside of their armor's air filters. The scene was not a skirmish. It was a charnel house. Another GSC patrol lay dead. But this was different. The bodies were not shot. They were shredded, ripped apart with a strength that defied the cult's capabilities. A hybrid's torso was plastered against a wall 20 meters from its legs. But it was the burns that gave Cassian pause. He knelt by a bulkhead, where a body had been his gauntlet, tracing a smoking, melted hole in the plasteel. The metal was still sizzling droplets of a viscous, clear fluid eating into the iron. Inquisitor Cassian said, his voice a low rumble over the vox. These wounds, they are acidic, molecular level. This is not cultist weaponry. Varus stepped forward, his self-assurance cracking. He looked at a corpse whose entire chest had been blown outwards as if from a fused melter charge. Report Thula, he snapped into his private command vox. What other xenoforms are catalogued for this world? And from his ship in orbit, the lexographer's voice came back, hesitant and cold. None, Lord. Officially. None. Maintain scan discipline, Sergeant Cassian ordered. Brother Librarian Malthus probed the veil. The team advanced their formation, tightening into a defensive star. They moved from the open transitway into a darkened maintenance corridor, a web of pipes and hissing steam. The air grew warmer, damper. It smelled like a slaughterhouse. Malthus, their Blood Raven's librarian, his blue armor almost black in the gloom, lowered his force stave. "There is nothing." He voxed his voice tight with a confusion that was almost worse than fear. "The Patriarch's agony is a distant storm, but here, there is a void. A cold, hungry, silent void. It has no mind to read, only an absence." Varys felt a chill, the first real doubt of the mission. "What does that mean?" Librarian Malthus's reply was grim. "It means it does not think." It is. Auspex, it was Brother Marine Vorlag, their Space Wolves tracker, who hissed the warning. He held up his gauntlet, the screen of his Auspex scanner glowing green. A single blip had appeared. Movement, 20 meters. Ahead. The team stopped. Bolters raised. The blip vanished. "Lost it," Vorlag growled. "Static." "Where did it?" Cassian began. Bleep. The scanner chirped again. A new contact. 15 meters. Behind them. Contact rear, Zal yelled, pivoting. The blip vanished. Bleep, 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 bleep. Suddenly the scanner's screen exploded with contacts. They were not approaching. They were there. Above us, Malthus roared, his precognitive senses flaring. Everywhere. The attack was not a charge. It was an avalanche of black chitin and fanged mouths. The ceiling panels exploded as 3 Xenomorph drones dropped into their midst. Simultaneously, 6 more burst from the floor grates and the corroded pipe walls. They were a chaotic mass of serrated tails and snapping inner jaws. This was not a cultist charge, desperate and disorganized. This was a calculated 3-dimensional ambush executed with perfect predatory instinct. "Engage for the Emperor," Cassian roared, firing his bolter point blank, blowing the head off one creature. But its acid blood sprayed, and Brother Marine Hector, their Iron Hands devastator, cried out as the acid ate through the joint of his pauldron, searing the flesh beneath. He stumbled, and another drone was on him, its tail lashing, punching straight through his helmet's eye lens. Zal's chainsword met the claws of another, but the creature was impossibly fast, its movements defying all logic. It used Zal's own momentum against him, climbing up the chainsword, and bit into his throat. His blood gargle was cut short. "Vorlag, retreat! Retreat to the Nexus," Cassian yelled, firing a crack missile from his gauntlet launcher at the ceiling, bringing tons of rock and metal down to block the tunnel. But as they pulled back, the space wolf, Vorlag, was seized. A tail wrapped around his ankle, dragging him off his feet. Brother Cassian yelled, turning back. Vorlag tried to fire his flamer, but 2 more drones were on him, dragging him into the darkness of a side tunnel. His last sound was not a scream, but a roar of pure Nordic rage cut short by the sickening, wet, crunching sound of his armor being torn open. In less than 30 seconds, a full kill team of Deathwatch Astartes had been decimated. Varys, his face pale with a shock he had never known, fired his plasma pistol wildly into the dark. Cassian grabbed the Inquisitor. "This way, Lord." Now he shoved Varys into a fortified control room. They had passed the heavy plasteel door, hissing shut, just as the first black, eyeless head slammed against its reinforced window. The clean and precise mission was over. Now it was a battle for survival. "The door will not hold." Brother Marine Hector bellowed, his voice distorted by the vox. He braced his massive, acid-scorched pauldron against the plasteel as another seismic thud slammed into it from the outside. The reinforced window was a spiderweb of cracks, and through it Varys could see a horrifying, shifting mass of black limbs. Glistening, eyeless heads hammered against the barricade, their inner jaws punching at the weakening metal. A fine spray of acid sizzled through a new crack, splashing onto the floor. Malthus found a weak point in the wall. "We blast our way out," Sergeant Cassian ordered. The librarian shook his head, his free hand glowing with psychic static. "They are everywhere, Sergeant. The entire corridor is a mass of them. They know we are in here. They are waiting." Varys gripped his plasma pistol, his knuckles white. The cold, arrogant certainty he had lived with for a century was gone, replaced by a visceral, primitive fear. He was an inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos, and he was about to be devoured by a creature he couldn't even name. Outside in the main transitway, Magos Patriarch Krell and his 20 remaining loyalists were not fighting. They were fleeing. The psychic screams of the Patriarch had driven half his congregation mad, and the other half, Hakar's half, had betrayed him. Now this new shrieking terror was hunting the survivors. They were running towards the sanctuary, their last bastion, when they heard the sound of Imperial bolter fire. They skidded to a halt, peering around a rusted gantry. They saw the scene, the fortified control room, its door buckling under the assault of 5. No, 6. Of the Black Devils. The Scourge. A hybrid whispered his faith waver. It fights the Imperial demons. Krell watched his mind working with a cold, new clarity. The bolter fire was from inside the room. The Imperials, the hated, ignorant oppressors, were trapped, and they were fighting the same thing that had defiled his god and shattered his life's work. The Scourge was not an angel. It was not a test. It was a pestilence. And in that moment, Krell's broken faith was reborn as pure, unadulterated hatred directed not at the Imperium, but at this new, perfect abomination. Krell spotted an internal Vox terminal on the wall beside him. He ran to it, shoving aside the rusted grill. Patch it to that room's local comm feed. Now he ordered a hybrid. Inside, the control room door screamed as its hinges began to tear. "Melter charge ready," Sergeant Hector yelled. Stepping back, "We go out fighting." Just as Cassian was about to give the order, a loud burst of static erupted from an ancient speaker in the console. "Imperial." A harsh alien voice crackled. "In the control room. Do you hear me?" Cassian and Varys froze. "We hear you, Xenofilth." Cassian growled, firing his bolter through a crack in the door, the shell exploding on a black carapace. "What do you want?" "The beasts at your door. They are hunting us, too." Krell's voice came back, strained with desperation. "They are the true enemy. The true blasphemy." Varys staggered to the console, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. "You speak of blasphemy, heretic. You are blasphemy. And what are you?" Inquisitor Krell's voice was a snarl. "You are dead. That door will fail. We are out here, and we have nowhere to run. We have a common enemy. Let us cleanse this place of the Scourge, together, after our gods can settle the matter of our sins." Varys looked at the acid sizzling on Hector's armor. He saw the door bend, a black, clawed arm punching through the metal. He made a decision. "We will open the door on my mark." Varys shouted into the Vox. "We will purge this corridor. But know this, Xeno, when this is done, you are next." Krell's voice was cold. "We are waiting." "Fire on your mark." Now Varys roared. Hector the Iron Hand's Devastator didn't use the melter charge on the door. He slapped it onto the wall beside the door, the thickest part of the bulkhead. Breaching, he yelled. The explosion was a controlled, devastating blast that vaporized the plasteel, opening a new, ragged doorway. For the Emperor, Cassian charged through, his bolter roaring. He was met by a hybrid Krell's, who pointed a lasgun at him, then lowered it, his bestial face a mask of confusion. "Kill the Black Ones!" Krell shrieked, pointing not at the Astartes, but at the Xenomorphs. The battle was joined. It was a nightmare of tactical impossibility. Krell's loyalists, driven by a desperate, suicidal faith, threw themselves at the Xenomorphs. They died in droves, their autoguns spitting uselessly at the carapaced horrors, their bodies torn apart, their blood purple and red mixing on the iron floor. But their sacrifice was not in vain. They acted as a screen, a chaotic moving mass of targets that confused the drones, whose predatory instincts were overwhelmed. The Death Watch operated within this chaos, like surgeons in a slaughterhouse. Cassian, Malthus, and Hector formed a triangular fire base, their bolter fire meticulously placed, each shell a miniature explosion that shattered a chitinous limb or a glistening head. This way, Krell screamed over the din, firing his auto-pistol into a drone. To the sanctuary. The Patriarch will cleanse this filth. Varus, his plasma pistol glowing hot, followed the irony of the situation, burning almost as much as his disgust. They fought their way through 2 more corridors, the combined force whittled down to Varus, the 3 Astartes, and Krell himself, with less than a dozen of his most fanatic followers. They finally reached the grand cistern that served as the antechamber to the Patriarch's throne room. But it was silent. The gunfire and shrieking died away, replaced by a wet, thick, dripping sound. "Where are the guards?" a hybrid whispered, his voice trembling. Krell looked around, his fanaticism faltering. The entrance to the throne room, once a grand arch of scavenged imperial masonry, was gone. In its place, the walls were covered in a glistening black biomechanical resin. It was the same alien material from the ship, but it was growing, spreading like a cancer, reshaping the very architecture of the Underhive. The air was hot, humid, and smelled of a reptile's den. No, Krell breathed. "No, this is wrong." "It's the nest," Malthus stated, his voice flat. "The psychic void is a storm here. It's the heart of it." They stepped through the arch, their boots sinking slightly into the resinous floor. The throne room was unrecognizable. It was a cavern of ribbed black material, and in the center, where the throne of bones and machinery should have been, was a sight that shattered the universe. The Patriarch was there. It was alive. Krell gave a choked cry of relief. "My God, he lives," and started to run forward. "Magos, wait!" Cassian yelled, but Krell was already on his knees 20 meters from the throne. He stopped. He stared. The Patriarch was not sitting in triumph. It was fused to the wall, held fast by thick, hardened resin, its 4 arms splayed wide in a grotesque, living crucifixion. Its psychic song was gone, replaced by a silent, telepathic scream of pure, unending agony that Varus and the Astartes could almost feel. Its chest, still raw and smoking from the acid wounds, was exposed. And crawling on it like obscene spiders were dozens of facehuggers. They skittered over the god's massive tyrannid frame, probing, seeking. One was clamped to the Patriarch's face, its tail wrapped around the thick neck, but the creature's own hyper-aggressive tyrannid biology was resisting, fighting the implantation in a futile internal war. The Xenomorph Queen was not trying to kill it. She was trying to use it, to breed with it, to create a hybrid of her own. She had reduced the living god of the Veiled Coil, the nexus of a billion-soul religion, to the status of livestock. Krell's body went rigid. The sound that escaped his throat was a thin, high-pitched whistling sound. The faith that had defined his entire existence, the truth he had been born for, didn't just break. It was exposed as a hollow, pathetic lie. His god was just another piece of meat in a larger, colder, more perfect food chain. He slowly, mechanically got to his feet, his face a white, blank mask of utter nihilism. Magos, one of his last followers, asked, his voice shaking. Krell looked at him, his eyes empty. "It's all a lie," he whispered, his voice dead. "There are no gods. There is only this. And it must all burn." The Patriarch's psychic death scream was the sound of a universe ending. It echoed in the minds of the survivors, a noise so profound it almost became a physical weight. Krell was the first to move. He was no longer a Magos, a leader, or even a man. He was an instrument of an ending. The ship, he whispered, his voice a dry rustle of dead leaves. He turned his back on his crucified god. The temple. Sector 9. Varus, his faceplate spattered with alien blood, looked at him. What about it? Krell's empty eyes met the Inquisitor's. It was a ship. It's a machine. All machines have a core, a heart. I felt it when I first sinned. His gaze drifted. A plasma reactor. Ancient but still alive. Cassian understood instantly. A melter charge detonation on the core would vaporize this entire sector. A suicidal run, Malthus countered, his voice strained. We are 3 Astartes, 1 Inquisitor, and a handful of broken heretics. The heart of that nest will be guarded by thousands. I am still functional, Hector, the Iron Hand growled. The acid had eaten away half his pauldron, but his grip on his melter gun was steady. I will carry the charges. It is not a choice. Librarian Varus said, his voice regaining its cold iron authority. We are not here to survive. We are here to ensure this does not. We are the Emperor's judgment. The reactor will be our pyre. Krell gave a hollow, rasping laugh. Not a pyre Imperial. An atonement. Let's go. They ran. They left the Patriarch in its living hell, a screaming monument to a false faith. The tunnels back toward Sector 9 were no longer metal and stone. They were flesh. The black biomechanical resin coated every surface, pulsing in a low, rhythmic thrum. The very hive was being digested, remade. And the hive mind, the cold, silent void, knew they were coming. They burst from the vents and grates, not in 2s or 3s, but in a black tide. And they were not just drones. These were new, more terrible things. Warriors, born from the hybrid stock of hackers purged. They were biological nightmares, a grotesque fusion of tyrannid and xenomorph DNA. Some ran on 4 legs, but a third vestigial arm, a hallmark of the Genestealer, twitched from their blackened chest. Others had the elongated, eyeless skull, but below it the bestial fanged maw of a 3rd-generation hybrid. They were faster, stronger, and they hated. Form a triangle, Cassian roared. Hector center Varus with me. The running battle was a blur of muzzle flashes and acid spray. Malthus crushed a dozen of the abominations, his psychic force smashing them into the resinous walls, but the void pushed back a cold, silent pressure that made his nose bleed. Hector used his melter as a close-quarters weapon, vaporizing a warrior that lunged at him, the superheated steam hissing as it hit the damp resin. Krell's remaining loyalists died, screaming dragged into the walls, which seemed to open for them, swallowing them whole. They burst through a final thick membrane of resin and fell tumbling down into the vast open space of the ancient cargo bay. The Egg Temple, the Queen's throne room. The air was blisteringly hot, thick with the smell of birth and ammonia. The Ogryn-born Queen was a sight of apocalyptic horror. She was colossal, a 20-meter-tall creature of spike-crowned, glistening black chitin. Her lower half was gone, fused into the very structure of the ship's reactor, her biomechanical resin intertwined with the ancient alien metal. She had become the reactor's new god, drawing power from it. Her vast, pulsating ovipositor was a fleshy, grotesque engine, pumping out hundreds of leathery eggs onto a conveyor of glistening resin, where drones scurried to carry them into the new tunnels. But it was the guards that made them freeze. Standing in a perfect silent circle around their mother were a dozen warriors. They were larger than the others, their carapaces thicker, adorned with serrated ridges. They were Praetorians. They stood utterly still like obsidian statues. As one, their eyeless heads snapped toward the intruders. Hector Cassian voxed, his voice grim. The reactor is occupied. Then I will go through her, the Iron Hand replied. Krell stared at the lead Praetorian, the largest, its armor scarred from old battles. Even covered in black chitin, he recognized the tattered shreds of the purple sash it still wore fused to its new body. Hacker Krell whispered, raising his auto-pistol. You found your purity, you blasphemous fool. Varus raised his plasma pistol, its blue-white light illuminating the hell in front of them. For the Emperor, he snarled. The Queen unleashed a scream that was not a sound, but a physical force, and the Praetorians charged. The Queen's shriek sent the Praetorians forward in a black wave. For the Iron 10th, Hector roared, stepping into the charge. He was not a warrior, he was a fortress. He fired his melter gun, the beam a lance of focused starlight that atomized the lead Praetorian, the one Krell had called Haka. But the others were too fast. One slammed into Hector's side, its claws raking uselessly against his thick armor. He backhanded it, crushing its skull, but another took its place. Cassian the Inquisitor, Malthus the Walls the Sergeant ordered. The librarian raised his hand, and a barrier of crackling blue energy erupted, deflecting 2 drones that had tried to flank them from the walls. But the psychic void of the hive pressed back, and Malthus screamed as blood poured from his nose, the barrier shattering. In that instant, the Queen decided the fight was over. With a sound of tearing metal and wet-sucking flesh, she tore her massive body free from the reactor. Her abdomen a mess of ruined tubes and alien machinery dragged behind her, but she was mobile. She ignored the others and swung a massive scythed arm at the Astartes. Hector saw the blow coming. He shoved Hector out of the way and took the full impact himself. The Queen's claw, larger than a man, smashed into the iron hand, disintegrating his melter gun and throwing him against the wall like a broken doll. Brother Cassian roared, turning to fire his bolter. It was the opening the enemy needed. A Praetorian's tail, a blur of black, punched straight through Cassian's back and burst from his chest plate, lifting the sergeant off his feet. He hung there, impaled for a second before he went limp. "No," Malthus cried, his grief breaking his concentration. The Queen's primary tail, a different, heavier weapon, swung like a battering ram, crushing the librarian against the reactor's casing. In less than 3 seconds, the Deathwatch kill team was annihilated. Varus and Krell stood alone. Krell, his mind broken, fired his auto-pistol on pure instinct, the bullets sparking uselessly against the Queen's crest. The massive creature advanced, dismissing the hybrid as an insect, and focused on Varus, who stood defiant, his plasma pistol glowing. "In the Emperor's name!" Varus began firing a shot that boiled a hole in the Queen's shoulder. It only enraged her. She swiped Krell aside, sending him flying into a pile of leathery eggs where he lay stunned. She loomed over Varus, her inner jaw hissing her head, lowering for the final executing bite. Varus closed his eyes, his duty done. A sound louder than any weapon, louder than reality, split the air. The entire far wall of the throne room exploded inward in a shower of resin, stone, and gore. A purple-skinned, four-armed fury landed in the center of the chamber. It was the Patriarch. It had ripped itself free from its cross, vast chunks of resin hanging from its back. It was a ruin. Its chest was a smoking crater of acid burns, and from that crater 3 small, pale, twitching xenomorph limbs had burst a horrific, half-birthed defilement. The Queen's violation had been a success. The Patriarch was impregnated a walking corpse. But it was not dead yet. It was a god, and it was furious. Its psychic rage was no longer a song. It was a white-hot, silent nova of pure existential hatred. It saw the Queen the source of its pain, its violation its end, and it saw nothing else. The Queen poised over Varus, turned her bladed crest, rising in challenge. She shrieked a biomechanical sound of territory and dominance. The Patriarch answered with a psychic roar that cracked the lenses on Varus's helm. Then the 2 apex predators, the 2 gods of the parasites, the Tyrannid Lord and the Xenomorph Matriarch collided. It was a storm of claws, tails, and fangs. The Patriarch, with the strength of a psychic god, tore at the Queen's crest, ripping a section of it clean off. The Queen's acid blood sprayed, burning the Patriarch, but it ignored the pain, plunging its 4 talons deep into her chest. The Queen screeched her tail, lashing, impaling the Patriarch through the abdomen, while her inner jaw punched a clean hole through its shoulder. They were locked in a mortal apocalyptic duel, a battle of pure predatory biology versus psychic tyrannid rage. It was a war that neither could win and that both were guaranteed to lose. The battle of the 2 gods was a storm that consumed the chamber. Acid and purple tyrannid blood sprayed in every direction, dissolving walls and sizzling on the metal floor. The 2 monsters were a vortex of black and purple, a singular dying entity, tearing itself apart. Varus Forgotten was scrambling to his feet, his plasma pistol lost. He looked at the chaos at the dying Astartes at the ruined reactor. His mission was a catastrophic failure. He had not just failed to contain the Xenos, he had been outclassed. He was a footnote in a war he didn't even know existed. He saw Sergeant Cassian's body, the bolter still clutched in his gauntlet. He ran to it, prying the sacred weapon from the dead Astartes' grip. He felt its weight, a comforting imperial truth in this alien hell. Across the chamber, Krell stirred. He was lying in a pile of newly laid overmorphs. One of them, sensing his warmth, was peeling open. He stared at it, not with fear, but with a final hollow clarity. He saw the facehugger uncurl. He saw the patriarch and the queen, two expressions of the same horrific, consuming void. He saw his broken faith, his dead followers, and the burning, ignorant zeal of the Inquisitor. He saw the entire galaxy as a lie, a cosmic, cruel joke. And he saw his purpose. He had been a fool, a slave to a false god, but now in the end he could be an event. He grabbed the melter charge pack from Brother Hector's ruined corpse. The Iron Hand was dead, his body a broken ruin, but the charge pack was intact, its activation rune blinking a healthy green. Varus was taking aim, his hands shaking, trying to get a clear shot at the Queen's head through the blur of combat. He saw Krell stagger to his feet, clutching the melter pack. Heretic Varus roared. "Get out of the way, I need a clear shot!" Krell looked at Varus. There was no hatred in his eyes, not even madness, only a profound, cold pity. "You see, Imperial." Krell whispered, his voice too quiet to be heard over the din, but Varus saw his lips move. "There are no gods, only monsters." He looked at the two creatures, the Patriarch's claws embedded in the Queen's chest, the Queen's tail buried in the Patriarch's gut. They were locked a perfect mutual annihilation. Krell activated the melter charge. The 5-second timer began. "There is only this," he said, and he ran. Varus screamed, "No, but Krell, the broken Magos, the true believer turned nihilist, did not run away." He ran toward the fight. He dove like a man, plunging into a holy fire, into the gap between the two warring gods, clutching the melter charge to his own chest. For nothing, he screamed, his voice a final act of blasphemy. The timer hit 0. The explosion was not a sound, it was an absence. A white, silent sun detonated in the heart of the throne room. The focused melter blast, designed to pierce tank armor, vaporized Krell the Patriarch and the Queen in a single instantaneous thermonuclear flash. The shockwave, a triforce of burning acid tyrannid ichor and plasma, slammed Varus backward, throwing him like a rag doll. He crashed into a bulkhead, and everything went black. He awoke to silence. A deep, profound, perfect silence. The psychic screaming was gone. The hissing was gone. He was alive. His artificer armor was cracked, his face was bleeding, but he was alive. He staggered to his feet in the ruined, scorched chamber. There was nothing left of the three leaders but a blackened, molten crater. Mission. He croaked, his throat raw, complete. He saw the exit the tunnel leading back to the Hive, and saw two figures staggering toward him. 2 more Death Watch Marines from a secondary kill team he had held in reserve. They had followed the sounds of the fight, arriving too late. "Inquisitor, you're alive," Varus didn't answer. He just grabbed the bolter. "We're leaving!" he rasped, turning his back on the pyre. "This world is dead." The journey to the surface was a grim, silent ascent. Varus, flanked by the 2 grim-faced Death Watch survivors, ascended through the Hive's main transport spire. As they rose, the sounds of the deep alien war faded, only to be replaced by a new, more familiar cacophony. When the massive lift doors ground open onto the surface level, a vast, smog-choked plaza, they were met not with silence, but with the full-throated roar of conventional warfare. The uprising had begun. Tracers from autoguns and las weapons stitched the air. A planetary defense force barricade already half overrun was firing desperately into a mass of robed figures. Hybrids, their faces a mix of human and Xeno, fired heavy stubbers from shattered windows. It was the day of ascension the war Varus had expected to fight. Now it looked like a child's tantrum. Varus and his 2 Astartes bodyguards simply walked out of the lift and into the crossfire. They did not run. They did not take cover. They were 3 figures of black armor and battered grim finality. The fighting around them stopped. PDF troopers and Genestealer cultists alike froze their weapons, lowering their minds, struggling to comprehend the sight. These black-armored giants, scarred from a battle far worse than this, and the Inquisitor, his face a mask of dried blood, and Ash just walked. They passed the barricades. They passed the hybrid firing nests. No one fired. They were figures from a different, more terrible conflict, and their very presence cast a pall of ultimate judgment over the battlefield. They did not engage. This small, pathetic war was already over. Its participants just didn't know it. They reached the designated extraction point, a high platform overlooking the burning city spire. The Nixus's shadow descended through the smoke, its ramp lowering before it even touched the ground. Varus and the 2 Astartes stepped on board. The Inquisitor walked to the cockpit and stood behind the pilot looking down. He saw the city in flames. He saw the purple banners of the veiled coil being raised on a captured bastion. He saw the PDF collapsing, the cultists cheering their hollow victory. They thought they had won their world. They had inherited a tomb. He activated his high-orbit command Vox, the channel reserved for his fleet. The face of Fleet Admiral Valerius appeared crisp and professional. "Lord Inquisitor, we read your signal. The seismic event was that you, the Patriarch, is neutralized," Admiral Varus said, his voice a dead monotone. "But the Xenos threat remains. It is compounded." Valerius looked confused. "My lord, our scans show the primary cult uprising is chaotic but well within purge parameters. Shall we deploy the Tempestus Scions to support the PDF?" Varus looked at the burning city one last time, 1 billion lives fighting a war that meant nothing. "No, Admiral," he said. He cut the visual feed from the city. "This world is a lost cause. The primary infection, the Tyrannid, was merely a host for a second, more perfect parasite. The contamination is absolute, from the bedrock to the spires." There was a long, heavy silence. The Admiral knew the words before they were spoken. "Your judgment, Lord Inquisitor." Varus's reflection stared back at him in the dark glass. "Exterminatus." The word hung in the cold air. "Reason unsalvageable Xenos contamination classification dualis. Scour the rock. Leave nothing for either of them. Burn it all." From the command deck of the Gilded Scythe, Secundus Primus was a poisoned jewel, a marble of toxic brown and sickly grey. Varus stood before the armor-glass viewport, a cup of recaf untouched in his hand. He had not removed his armor. He did not feel clean enough to wear his robes. Below him, the Exterminatus was not a sudden, fiery event, but a meticulous, cold execution. The first wave of cyclonic torpedoes struck. They did not detonate on the surface. They bored deep, their melter charges driving them into the planet's mantle. The world shuddered. The great Hive Spire's monuments to millennia of industry toppled in agonizing silence, their structural integrity gone. Then the second wave struck. The torpedoes detonated in the planet's core, and Secundus Primus cracked. The atmosphere, a soup of smog and poison, was ignited in a single silent flash, scrubbing the surface clean. Continents buckled. Oceans of toxic sludge boiled away into the void. Varus watched the planet die. He watched as the lives of billions Imperial citizens, PDF troopers, heretics, and the countless nameless workers were snuffed out to deny the Xenos their prize. He felt nothing. Not relief, not victory. Only the cold, sterile weight of his duty. We hear the crackle of a Vox recorder. Varus's voice now flat, and archival fills the void. ++ inquisitorial log segmentum obscurus. File Secundus Primus ++. The planet is cleansed. The primary threat, Genestealer cult, designate veiled coil, was confirmed. As per Ordo Xenos doctrine, the Patriarch-class organism was located and terminated. The cult's subsequent uprising was predictable, a known factor, a biological imperative driven by hunger, a desire to consume and replicate for its star gods. It is a cancer, but a cancer we understand. We know its shape, its desires. We can cut it out. This log, however, concerns the secondary threat. Species designate Praetorian Noctis. Origin unknown. It is different. The Tyrannid wishes to consume. This Praetorian, it wishes to replace. It is a biological imperative of perfect, undiluted purity. It does not feel, it does not hate, it does not desire other than to propagate. It is efficient in a way that is terrifying. It took a thriving multi-generational Tyrannid infection, a system of belief, a god, and it turned it into a resource. It made a mockery of the Tyrannid's own parasitic nature. It is the perfect parasite, a creature of shadow acid and absolute biological superiority. The Tyrannid sees the galaxy as a feast. This creature sees it as a nursery. Its weapons are its own body. Its blood is a weapon. Its birth is a weapon. It is perfect. A perfect, unthinking, unfeeling engine of invasion. I have authorized the cleansing of all records pertaining to Sector 9. I have declared the world perdita. May the Emperor forgive me for the judgment, but not for the act. Plus per log ends, Varus, Ordo Xenos, blah blah. The recording cuts out. We are back in the void, watching the shattered remains of Secundus Primus. The narrator's voice, the voice of the grim, dark future, returns. Varus had won, but victory in the 41st millennium is not measured in survival. It is measured in erasure. The Imperium had faced two all-consuming threats, two voids that wished to swallow mankind. The first, the Tyrannid, was a roaring hunger, a passionate, screaming desire to devour. The second, the Xenomorph, was a cold, silent hunger, a patient, perfect desire to become. The first was a war. The second was an ecology. And in the silent, star-dusted darkness, a single vast chunk of the planet's bedrock, ejected by the core's explosion, tumbles end over end. It is a fragment of Sector 9. Inside, fused into the rock, is a small, scarred section of the ancient alien hull. It is still sealed. It is still cold. And inside it, protected by the very metal that had brought it a single, leathery, perfect overmorph, waits in the dark, patiently drifting toward a new, unsuspecting world.